All right, endocrinology is the topic for the day. Now, endocrine organs. See, we have something called as exocrine organs, and then we have something called as endocrine organs. Now, these exocrine organs have got something called as the duct system. So, whatever secretions are there, they will send these secretions through the ducts, and the ducts will carry them to the destination. For example, the digestive enzymes. Okay, all the glands, glands which secrete digestive enzymes. What happens in them is that these enzymes are secreted. Then there is a duct system which carries the enzymes to the particular place, and then this enzyme acts over there. For example, cholecystokinin. All right, secreted by the uh, cholecystokinin that is secreted. It comes out via the biliary tree and goes into the duodenum where the action takes place, or salivary amylase secreted by the salivary glands. What happens? There is a duct system which carries this into the mouth, and there the action takes place. All right, so there is a proper duct system, whereas endocrine glands do not have duct system. Do not have duct system. So what happens is that the secretions are poured into the blood. Secretions are carried by the blood, and wherever there is a receptor or the destination organ, these secretions, okay, so these secretions are usually hormones. And wherever the hormone receptors are there, whichever cells the hormone receptors are there, those cells will take up these hormones. These hormones will occupy the receptors, and then it will show its actions. So most of the times, remember that all these endocrine glands have a rich blood supply. Why? Because it is through the blood that these hormones are being circulated. So that is why each endocrine gland usually has a rich blood supply. And there are certain other kinds of glands. So like autocrine. What is autocrine gland? Where the secretions act on the same gland, on the cells itself. Autocrine glands are those glands where the secretions act on the cells themselves. Okay, the secretions don't act, the target organ is not something different. It is the same gland itself. Then there is something called as paracrine. What do you mean by paracrine? It acts on the next cell. The secretion is secreted over here by this cell, and it goes and acts on the next cell over here, like this. These are paracrine. Okay, so you have autocrine glands, you have paracrine glands. All right. Then, as we saw just now, endocrine and exocrine, that also we saw. All right. So these are some of the terminologies that we know. Now, let us go to pituitary gland. Just give me a minute. So let us talk about the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is the master gland. It is this gland which controls many other endocrine glands. So in the brain, we have something called as diencephalon. And a part of this diencephalon is something called as hypothalamus. So we have something called as hypothalamus like this, and from to the hypothalamus is attached the pituitary gland with the help of a stalk. This is hypothalamus. This is the hypothalamus. Okay? And to this is attached the pituitary gland. This pituitary gland has got a posterior part, and it has also got an anterior part. All right. The anterior part is called as adenohypophysis. It contains glands, adenohypophysis, and It arises from the Rathke's pouch. In embryology, if you must have studied, it arises from the Rathke's pouch. Whereas the posterior pituitary, it has got neural cells, and hence it is called as neurohypophysis. Posterior pituitary does not secrete anything itself. It just stores and releases hormones. Which hormones are stored and released? One is vasopressin, also called as anti-diuretic hormone. Vasopressin, also called as anti-diuretic hormone. The other one is the oxytocin, which you must have studied in obstetrics. Oxytocin. Now, who secretes this? If it is not secreted by the posterior pituitary, who is it that secretes this? So, it is secreted by the hypothalamus, by the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei of the hypothalamus. So, this is what secretes it, and these secretions are then carried via the stalk and stored in the posterior pituitary. Okay, and how are they carried? Via neurophycins, which are carrier proteins. So basically, the posterior pituitary that is there, it does not secrete anything, it only stores, okay, and it has neural cells. Whereas anterior pituitary, it has got the gland cells, and that's why it's called as adenohypophysis. Now, what does it secrete? So one thing that it secretes is a hormone called as growth hormone, GH. All right. The other hormone that it secretes is a hormone which controls the function of the thyroid gland, which is known as TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. GH is growth hormone. Now, what else does it secrete? It secretes a hormone which controls the adrenal cortex. So if you know, adrenal is a gland which is above the renal. It is called as suprarenal or adrenal because it is above the kidney. And this adrenal gland is divided broadly into two parts. The inner part is called as the medulla, and the outer part is called as the cortex. The cortex itself is made up of three layers, that is zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and zona reticularis, which basically secrete mineralocorticoids, corticosteroids, and adrenal sex hormones, all right, so androgens that they are. So this is how the secretion takes place. So these hormones, which hormone? The glucocorticoids. The glucocorticoid hormones are controlled by a hormone called as ACTH. What is the full form? Adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH. All right. Now, then there are hormones which are essential for the reproductive functions. What are they? One is FSH, which is called as follicle stimulating hormone. As the name suggests, it stimulates or causes the growth of the ovarian follicles. Okay. Then there is something called as LH, which is known as luteinizing hormone. And there is something called as prolactin. What is prolactin? Prolactin is the hormone which is essential for milk secretion by the breast. So there is one more called as MSH, melanotropic stimulating hormone, all right, which is secreted by intermediate. Now, what is intermediate pituitary? So the part of the pituitary, which is part of adenohypophysis, which is close to the neurohypophysis, we can sometimes call it as the intermediate. So sometimes they say that this is the part which secretes MSH, which is responsible for the pigmentation or melanin formation. All right.